Hey everybody, how you doing? I want to first and foremost thank you all so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules today to be part of this virtual masterclass. I am super excited. Number one, that you're here to join me. Number two, that we have some incredible panelists that I know are going to share some incredible information today as it relates to new student orientations, first year experience programs, student success initiatives, and welcome week events. So again, thank you all so much for joining us today. Just to introduce myself, again, my name is Dr. Joshua Fredenberg. I am number one, a national speaker that travels all across the country, inspiring students and professionals. Number two, author of 7 books with my newest book out called Red Leadership, 15 ways to retain, engage, and develop culturally diverse leaders of the emerging generation. And last but definitely not least, president of the Circle of Change Leadership Experience, where we not only host annual conferences right now virtual throughout the year, but we also have a variety of e-courses as well that are available that focus on inclusive leadership, that focus on resilience, that focus on career success, and also career success for first generation students, and so much more. And so if you want more information about that, again, you can visit our website at circleofchangeleadershipconference.com. And as you saw in the video, we are getting ready for our annual leadership experience this fall, November 18th through the 21st. It's going to be absolutely incredible. It's our third virtual leadership experience over the past year since COVID. Fingers crossed in 2022 of the spring, we'll be going back in person, potentially in California, but we'll have more information about that soon. But most importantly, make sure you spread the word. Make sure you get your students there. I am telling you, it's going to be absolutely incredible. But again, I want to just thank you all so much for joining us today. And just want to have an opportunity to know who is in the house today. I'm looking on my screen. I see about 240 to 250 people that are logged in. So if you could just represent yourself for the next 30 to 45 seconds, I would just like to know where you are from. I am here right now in Miami, Florida. I'm down in the south part of the United States of America, but I'm ultimately from California. But if you can let us know, I see Toledo, Ohio. I see San Jose. Fort Worth, Texas is in the house. Central Florida, hello. I see Phoenix is in the house. Shelby, North Carolina. Kansas City, ATL, welcome. Virginia, Flagstaff, Arizona, New York City, Daytona Beach, Florida. I mean, they're coming. I see New Jersey, Tallahassee, Rock Hill, South Carolina, Portland, Oregon, South Dakota State, Maryland. Man, we got people from all over the country. I wonder if we have the whole nation represented. Again, thank you all so much for joining us today on this Wednesday afternoon. Some of you, it's about 1. Some of you, it's 2, 3, or 4. Again, we're so happy that you're here today. Please represent. And again, if you see someone you know, connect. Again, we're not only here to empower, but we're here to connect. So make sure you are connecting with people. Make sure you're asking questions. Make sure you're giving us that effect in the virtual audience. You know, where high fives, all that good fire, whatever the case may be. We want to know that you're being empowered as we're speaking. Although we're not there, we can feel the energy that is radiated through the screen. So again, we want to thank y'all so much. We're not going to waste any time because, again, we have about an hour and 20 minutes, and there is so much to talk about, right? Orientation, welcome week, first year programs, transition from COVID. How do you integrate DEI into new students? I mean, we have so much to talk about, and I'm telling you, we got an incredible panel. So I'm not going to waste any time because we have incredible one incredible woman on the panel today. I'm going to start with Dr. Vanessa Bustamante. Dr. Vanessa Bustamante, if you could introduce yourself, let us know exactly what you do. And the first question I want to ask you is this: what is one action item that you believe that those responsible for new student orientation, welcome week, student success initiatives can implement to prepare their culturally diverse or first generation students for collegiate success? Dr. Bustamante, welcome. It's on you.
Hi, good afternoon. Buenas tardes a todos. Again, my name is Doctora Vanessa Bustamante. My pronouns are she, her, ella, ellas. and I am coming to you out of Los Angeles, California, but I currently work in Oceanside, California. I work at Miracosta College with our orientation and student support services. I also do a lot of speaking engagements tailored to first generation, Chicanx, Latinx student populations, as well as cultural validation theory presentations and workshops. I'm really happy to be here with all of you today and share my input as to something that you can implement today to connect with your first generation students of color through orientation is to be real with them from the get. Don't come in here pretending to be someone you're not. Be yourself, because that is who the students are looking for. They are looking for somebody that looks like them, that talks like them, that comes from communities that they come from on their college campus. That is what is going to help them stay there. And that is what is going to help them connect with the campus environment.
Awesome. So wonderfully said, Dr. Bustamante. Authenticity is so important. Can we give a big virtual round of applause for Dr. Vanessa Bustamante? Represent. We're going to stay in California. We're going to move up north. My man, my good friend, Dr. Jason Merriweather. Man, introduce yourself. Let the people know what you do, and let us know what is one action item that you would like to share with the virtual audience today. Dr. J, it's on you.
All right. Hey, everyone. Hey, everyone. It is an honor to be in this space with my good man, Dr. Joshua, and with all of you dynamic colleagues. It is an honor to be here in this space. I've been looking through the chat like, wow, I'm coming to you from Northern California at Humboldt State University, one of the 23 campuses of the California State University. And behind me, you actually see in my background the Coral Sea, which is one of our research vessels for our marine biology program. This is an amazing part of the experience at Humboldt State University way up here. We are a Hispanic serving institution as well, and we are one of the leading colleges that graduate STEM majors in California. Now, to answer the question, an action item, what to do, what to take home: connect, learn, and teach. Take time in this space to connect with other people through the chat, virtually, send a text message, send an email, and also connect with us. In addition to connect, make sure that you take time to learn, hear from everyone, hear the ideas, hear the perspectives, hear the thoughts, and don't forget, you are a teacher too. Not only are you here to learn and absorb, but you are here so that other people can pick up information and learn your best and effective practices to make a change on their campus as well. Have a great day and welcome to this space.
Come on, somebody. Dr. J, Dr. Jason Merriweather. Give Dr. Merriweather a big round of applause in virtual land. Connect, engage. And I like one of the things that he said: share your expertise. If you have any insight that you want to share, let it be known in the chat room as well. We are having a collective conversation. I love that. We're moving to the East Coast and we're going to South Carolina. Dr. Emmanuel, welcome. Introduce yourself. Let us know what you do and what is your action item as we get into this incredible virtual masterclass.
Well, thank you for having me. A couple of things, I was looking at where everyone is from, and I have to be biased. I am originally from Brooklyn, New York. I think Brooklyn is the best place in the world. So I'm a little biased, but welcome everyone. My name is Dr. Emmanuel Milan. I am the Vice President for Enrollment Management and Student Services in the HBCU of the year, Benedict College in Columbia, South Carolina. 2019, we were named HBCU of the year. There was no HBCU of the year in 2020, so we still hold those reigns. So we are excited about that. We are the HBCU that put the BC in HBCU. So thank you for having me. If I had to think about one advice, I would say, or a couple of advices. One, give yourself grace, right? We have come through one of the most challenging times that we have known, and it's an opportunity for us to give ourselves grace. Make sure you take some time for yourself. As leaders, we do sometimes forget about that, and that we're preparing for these new students as they come on campus. We want to make sure we give ourselves grace and take some time for ourselves and our family. The other piece is, as it relates to Welcome Week, orientation, first year experience, we have to be intentional, right? We know that these students are coming from what I like to call virtual high schools, right? Some for 2 years, right? This year and last year. And we want to be intentional. We want to make sure that our programs that we are putting together in front of these students, whether it's in person or virtual, we want to make sure that we try to hone in on some soft skills. That's going to be important because, you know, many of them knows TikTok and they know how to interact and they show their personalities through social media. And if they're returning to campus, if those campuses are going to be open, we want to make sure we find programs and have programs and implement programs that really touch on their soft skills. Gen Zs are pretty tech savvy, so we want to be intentional in everything that we do as it relates to Welcome Week. So that would be my action item.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Emmanuel. I love that concept, intentionality. I think that's so incredibly important. Can we give Dr. Emmanuel a big virtual round of applause out there in virtual land? That is awesome. Now we're going to go down to Louisiana, Texas, where my good friend Jared literally just finished doing a presentation today at a school, and now he's here on our virtual masterclass. Jared, man, you're no stranger to these virtual masterclass, always coming here, just sharing incredible information. So we just want to welcome you once again. Please introduce yourself again and share one action item as we get ready to get into this engaging conversation.
Thank you so much, Joshua, for the invitation and the opportunity to share today. My name is Jared Benjamin. I work at Florida International University. I'm the Cybersecurity Apprenticeship Program Director and also Cybersecurity Professor. I'm super excited to be here because when I think about actually what Dr. Lalonde just shared, intentionality, I want to be clear that there's no accidental roads to success. So you have to be intentional because you're just not going to fall into a pitfall of success. So ensure when you're bringing programmatic thrusts to your campuses and different opportunities for your students, they're culturally relevant. I do get it. Yeah. Soft skills are hugely important. How to effectively communicate, how to use empathy, but be sure that empathy is not a one-way street. We can't ask for students to be empathetic to our customer service provisions because we're coming back from a virtual space, but we not exercise empathy in the classroom. We not exercise empathy in advising, exercise empathy in matriculation. Be empathetic and understand it's a first for us all. And especially to our first gens, you may be having a conversation with a mom and she don't understand her socials needed for FAFSA. She potentially could be thinking, what you doing with my social? Be empathetic that may not be a normal conversation to have. So empathy and intentionality, I think they're going to be synonymous as we work with our colleagues for the next hour. Thanks, Josh, for the opportunity. And I'm honored to be with these panelists today and bring some jewels to the crowd.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. I love what you said, Jared. Empathy. That's so incredibly important. You connect intentionality with empathy. That's so incredibly important. Can we give virtual round of applause to Jared? Let him know that we appreciate him in virtual land as well. And if I was to respond to this question again, there's so many things that we can talk about, but I just believe in the integration of career readiness. One of the things that I share with students all the time is I say career readiness doesn't begin when you're a junior or a senior. It should begin when you're a freshman, because once you have an idea of your career path, once you have an idea of what path you plan to take, you can use that in maximizing your collegiate experience. So I just encourage people that are working with new student orientation, welcome week initiatives, student success initiatives, and first year programs that you're integrating career and professional development. Not only does that bring value to the university, but more importantly, I believe the reason why you go to school, right, is to ultimately position yourself for a great career so you can ultimately go out there and make an impact. And ultimately, it helps to raise the importance of higher education as well. So great points as we get ready to jump into our first question. And Dr. Bustamante, I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to start with you. So one of the things that I just integrated with this book called Red Leadership, and one of the things we talk about is retention. And in this book, one of the key things that they talk about from a corporate or an organizational standpoint is this concept of onboarding. They have found that onboarding has a great impact, not only on engagement, but on retention as well. And when I look at new student orientations, I kind of look at it similar to onboarding, because you're actually not only getting people acclimated with the collegiate or the college or the university or the school, but ultimately you're preparing them for collegiate success. And so what I want to ask you, Dr. Bustamante, when we deal with first generation and culturally diverse students, what are some specific things that professionals should integrate into their new student orientation, into their first year experience programs, into their student success initiatives, or welcome week events that can really make a significant impact when it comes to retention and engagement?
Definitely. That's a great question, Josh. And I think that's a great point. The fact that onboarding, orientation is an onboarding of new students, which is why our department name actually just changed to onboarding and student support. And I think one of the most important aspects that I think professionals need to be mindful of is that these incoming students don't understand our acronyms and they don't understand the terminology that we're using on an everyday basis. I will even say when I got my position, I did not understand what matriculation was because I had never gone to a community college. And so for me, I was like, I have to do a presentation on matriculation? How do I have a doctorate and not know what matriculation is, right? So you can just imagine all of these first year incoming, probably first generation college students who are like, I have to do the matriculation what? What is matriculation, right? And so it's really simplifying what it is to do, what it is that we need them to do, right? It's identifying steps. These are your first steps that you need to take to, onboard into the college successfully. This is what, we need to integrate into the orientation, walking our students through this process that can be so tedious because there are different points to this process, different departments they need to visit. So if you put that all into your orientation, and this is a one-stop shop and students are able to do all of that on the day of their orientation, they were not just like successfully helped by people on the college, but they also finished all of the things that they needed to do that might have been obstacles for them. I think another thing that would be really imperative to also look at is the structure of your orientation program. I know we've been doing a lot of things online in this last, year, 2 years almost. We also probably are going to integrate back onto campus, right? And so it's really thinking about what are the things that are going to connect with your students. For our virtual orientation, we ended up doing a game show because as a staff of people of color, we thought about, well, I didn't have cable when I was a kid. What was always on TV? What is something that I knew would be on TV? And it was a game show. So we literally did a game show. We integrated poll everywhere. So students were able to answer questions, be on the leaderboard, on the actual, Zoom platform. We ended up mailing gifts, which would have been their orientation gifts, backpacks with swag and all of that. We ended up mailing all those things to the students. And the students, actually 98% of students that attended our orientations were actually really excited. They said that they understood, a lot of the new student resources for the campus, that the people from our campus were friendly, helpful, that said things in ways that they could understand them. So it's really coming back to your department and dismantling a lot of these words and these hierarchical structures that have been created by these systems to make sure that we're connecting one-on-one with students who are first generation. Because when we look at our statistics of many of our campuses, and I'm going to speak more to California right now, most of our statistics, when we look at our students, they're first generation, and most of them are Latinx, Chicanx students. And so when you think of those demographics, you're also having to think, okay, so from an equity lens, how do I make sure to not make these programs white-centered, which they have traditionally been, right? How do I cater to the demographic of students that I am serving and I'm going to be serving in the next 10 to 15 years? Because if you look at projections, you also see that students of color are going to come to our campuses in higher numbers. So how are we going to get ahead of this instead of being behind and continuing to do the same things that we have been doing for years? And so in reality, that's what it really is. It's also talking to your students and taking surveys after you've done something and seeing how that actually works out for them, because we can have all the ideas we want, but if it's not reaching our students the way we need it to reach our students, then we're not doing our jobs and we need to go back to the drawing board. Long gone are the days of where we just do what we've been doing because it's not broken, because it has been broken. And so we need to come in and actually think of new innovative ways that are actually connecting with our students.
Wow, that was really good. I love that. I love what you had to say. So much that you said, and I thought that was so incredibly powerful as far as just the structure, making it more simplistic for students, and really catering to the students in which you serve as well. So I want to throw it to our other wonderful panelists, Jared, Dr. Emmanuel, Dr. Jason. Anything y'all want to share as relates to that question?
I think I will add on to her point. Here at Benedict College, a historically Black college and university, for us, we want to make sure we have wraparound services as well, right? We pride ourselves in BC Cares, right? So when the pandemic hit, we wanted to make sure we address students' needs because they're coming from all diverse backgrounds, food insecurities, meeting them where they are, right? So how do we make sure that we address transportation needs? How do we make sure we address just mental health issues that these students are going to be coming back to campus with? For us, that wraparound service is definitely important. I also want to address that diversity, inclusion, and equity training in orientation in the beginning is going to be even more important. They are dealing with a pandemic. They dealt with a protest, and we definitely had politics, right? So students understanding how to manage someone who is from California, Florida, South Carolina, and understanding that we all can have differences, but there are some commonalities that we all have, and that is going to be important. How do you have different views, but yet still come to an understanding? And when we have these students who are more on a virtual space, we can lose that. So that's going to be important. At HBCUs, and more important, LGBT issues are going to be very, very important. All right, we have a huge number of trans students here. So how to make sure that they feel welcome? How do we make sure that from an equity standpoint that we are thinking about their perspective and have it in mind when we're at an HBCU? So all of those things are going to be important as we navigate this new norm, I would like to say.
That's great. That's great.
Josh.
That's amazing. I love it. I love it. Jared, yes.
Yeah, so Josh, as I think about actually what Dr. Lalonde just shared, it actually had me think through some other things that institutions are doing as I go to institutions and work with them, but also what I see our institution doing is important. When you're talking about an equity lens, please don't talk about equity to just students, but not have that conversation with faculty and staff. Because what happens is now you're building single points of failure where the training is only pointing at one population, but is not fixing the total problem or the total lack of knowledge, because it's only a problem because ignorance is there, not because some people want to do better. So I bring that up to say, before we cancel individuals for lack of knowledge, let's postpone them to see if they're willing to be educated. And if they're willing to be educated, we don't have to cancel them immediately. And so I think it's important as we unveil training mechanisms leading up to orientation, not just during orientation, are we having conversations about the 5 major privileges? Are we talking about heterosexual privilege, gender privilege, socioeconomic privilege, religious privilege? As we unpack those privileges, it will also break cultural layers and biases that folks didn't even know exist because it was a part of our upbringing. You know what I'm saying? I grew up in a very strict faith-based apostolic home. So there was things I was not exposed to until I went into the Army and went into higher ed. It's not that I didn't want to accept other cultures. I didn't see them to accept them. I went home, church, home, church, home. And so in not knowing anything else, I was ignorant to knowing. So now that I've now been educated, I can now support students, faculty, and staff through any biases that were just inherent, a part of the privilege I inherited. And then the last thing before moving on for me is, recognize that we have a privilege too. I think in our global pandemic, one of the other parts of our pandemic has been racial unrest. And what we've noticed is when we speak about privilege, synonymously, we start saying white privilege when we haven't unpacked other privileges. So I encourage faculty and staff to be encouraged to self-check. And so I look at, as I don't want to tear down the barriers. I want to tear down the barriers, but I don't want to check somebody about white privilege if I haven't checked myself about heterosexual privilege, gender privilege, religious privilege, socioeconomic privilege. So as you unpack these privileges and acknowledge you have them, now you can really be an ally to somebody who don't have them, such as a student. And remember, our students and our customers. Without our students, we're gonna be wondering who we're gonna cut off the roster because we ain't gonna be able to pay every bill. So it's important to recognize our customer and give them a sense of customer service that is not situated to an inherent privilege that I'm not willing to work through.
Great, that's great. I love it. I love it so much in these first few answers. Dr. Merriweather, anything you want to say?
It's amazing when you're on with a good group and you're sitting there like, I can do that on my campus. I can add that to my conversation at home. I feel like I signed up for something. Let's go. So a couple of thoughts for your consideration, in addition to everything that my colleagues have shared. So one of the things that's important for orientation, that introductory phase, is a reminder that this is about learning. This is about learning. And I think we miss that. We get so caught up in have you registered for class? Have you paid your bill? Especially have you paid your bill? Have you gotten what you need to financial aid, right? And so it's really important that as we unpack this conversation, we frame ourselves in the learning aspect. How do we do that? First of all, keep it simple. There's nothing worse than something comes up later, and then you ask the question, well, did we discuss that in orientation? Oh yeah, we did that on day 3 in one of the sessions. But that's really, really important. Like, did we have to really bury it deep down in there? If it's that important, shouldn't we discuss it frequently and in multiple ways so that students have access to this information? Can we align that with our collateral material, with our text messaging? Do we push it through the app and the chat bot? Or do we rely on that old-fashioned concept of, well, we said it this time, so therefore they're responsible for it? That's not how we learn, and it's not how we effectively teach. And so orientation has to come back to the frame of learning. I also think that it's really important that we keep things simple. Orientation can be a really simple process if we just focus on sharing resources in a way that students can access the information. I love what Dr. Bustamante said about acronyms. Thank you so much for that. Because, I was at a school, I won't call them out because I don't want to get in trouble and they still like me, but I was at a school once where I worked and they had the bursar's office. And they were so frustrated because students, didn't pay their bill and this, and that. And why aren't they going online to pay their bill? And I'm like, well, they probably don't know what a bursar is. What's a bursar? Can we just change it to pay the bill? And then there was this big fight about that. Oh, we don't want to change it to we're the bursar office. Yeah, but students want to pay the bill. So we changed it. Yeah. So we have to look at that language that we use that affirms us. It affirms our identity, makes us feel really powerful because we have all these things in our title or the way our office sign looks, but that's not how students receive the information. And the other piece that I want to add with respect to the DEI, see, I'll just use an acronym, the diversity, equity, and inclusion conversation. Orientation is a place. It's the place to diffuse deficit thinking. That has to happen. It has to start on day 1. If I admitted you, I necessarily believe you're capable of learning and being successful academically and earning a degree. Let's just unpack that there. If I admitted you, I can't blame K-12 because I admitted you. I can't be mad at your parents because I admitted you. So if you're at this institution, we have to believe that you are here fundamentally to learn. And the deficit approaches that are often buried in the intrinsic nature of the egotist setup of the academy is fully rooted in exclusion, in elitism, and deficit thinking. So how do we unpack that? What did I just say? We have to teach our faculty about it too, and make sure that they don't understand and believe that students can't learn in the classroom. Because if they're there, they can learn, perhaps the flaws in the teaching. That also applies to the co-curricular aspect of this as well. If we're going to do this work, and we're going to keep it 100% funky here, if we're going to do this work, excuse the nomenclature, but we're going to tell it today. If we're going to engage in this work, we have to recognize that the barriers even in student affairs, because we love it so much and we love students so much. But if we get caught up in the elitism of the academy and we believe the students can't learn, or there's something problematic about their social economic status, problematic about their race, their ethnicity, their sexual orientation, gender identity, their race, their creed, their thoughts, their mores, their values, or their hues, then problematically, fundamentally, we have been the barrier that we lament so much at conferences. So orientation has to start with the fundamental aspect of learning and a belief that everyone that we admitted can learn, and our system has to work for them to learn.
Boy, drop the mic. That was amazing, Doctor. That was amazing, Jason. I love it. So many phenomenal points from all of our panelists. And I just want to build upon what Jason said. I just want to build on the learning aspect. Number one, I think it's so incredibly important that not only are we empowering our students, but we're also empowering the professionals that are serving our students as well. I think that is critically important, especially as it relates to DEI as well. And one thing I wanted to share that I normally share in all of my presentations when I do new student orientation and first year experience program is I use a concept called the 3 I's. And the first I is identify, helping students to identify what is your passion, what are your strengths, who are you, what makes you tick, what is your why. I found that when a person identifies their passion, when they identify their why, not only are they more engaged, but that helps them to overcome challenges and circumstances. The second I is imagine. What is your vision? What do you see? Maybe it's just to graduate. Maybe it's just to do good the first year. Hopefully it's to not only graduate, but position yourself for career success and to make an impact. Begin challenging them to begin to envision, to begin to think of something that's bigger than themselves. And the last I is involvement. It's getting in the game, as I like to say, getting involved in your community, getting involved in organizations. One of the things I tell students all of the time is that your out of the class experience may be even more important than your in-class experience. I know some of y'all gonna give me a lot about that, but I found in my development as a bachelor's, as a master's, as a doctoral student, I have found that the classroom is amazing and it was awesome. And that was great knowledge. But again, knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge is power. And not until I was able to apply the information that I learned in the classroom did it actually begin to provide results. And the wonderful thing about being involved is you're actually able to use the things that you learn in class and actually apply them once you're out of classes. So I call them the 3 I's that I think have a tremendous impact, not only on retention, but the engagement of students as well. Man, such incredible points for the first question. We're going to move on to the next question. And Dr. Merriweather, I'm going to start with you and we'll move back. There was actually a study that I read about in Inside Higher Education, came out January 2020. And one of the things that they discovered was this. They discovered that 2-year institutions were more effective at serving what they said minority and first generation students than 4-year institutions. And so, Dr. Mary, I'm going to start with you and we'll move to the panel. Why do you believe that 2-year institutions, according to this particular study and article, have been more effective than 4-year institutions when it came to student success with first gen and minority students?
I appreciate this question and thank you. So I think we have to disaggregate that a bit. So my grad degree, HBCU, my wife's grad degree, HBCU. We have 3 kids in college. Our oldest is at an HBCU, Langston University, and shout out to Fisk, where I spent 10 years of my career and earned my grad degree. So I think with respect to PWIs, predominantly white institutions, that data is there. But I believe if we disaggregate it, HBCUs have been coming with that work for a very long time. So I think we have to disaggregate that. And I'll pass the rest of that to Dr. Lalonde to unpack that. But I just have to shout that out. So if we disaggregate the data, I'd be curious to see that look. So with respect to that study, what's happening and how and why? So as a consultant, I've spent time doing enrollment management consulting with community colleges, as well as predominantly 4-year institutions. So what I found, the reason community colleges get it right is because they understand who their students are. Those days of look to your left, look to your right, these people won't be here in 4 years. There are too many four-year institutions, they're still hanging on to that. And first of all, if your iPad's cheat code is 6-year graduation rate, you need to let that go because it's been gone. But we have to understand the fundamental flaw in the grand design of this. If you're an institution and your focus is anything other than student success and teaching, yes, research matters. I write books, I'm a scholar, I'm all about that. Research matters. That's what we're all here to do. But it can't be a detriment to focusing on student success and learning. Bringing in grant dollars matter, creating revenue matters. Yes, it's about money too. But at the end of the day, we have to understand we're here for students and a student type. And if we're at a historically Black institution, we're here at, I work at a Hispanic serving institution. We understand who our students are, therefore we're there. I say this at Humboldt State all the time, and I didn't even mention my title earlier. I'm the Vice President of Enrollment Management and Student Affairs. I didn't even mention that earlier. But anyway, we say this in my institution all the time. When I was at an HBCU for 10 years, we never had to figure out we were an HBCU. We came in, we did it, and we knew who we were here to serve. At Humboldt, we're working on, I have a really dynamic colleague, Fernando, who runs our El Centro, our Hispanic Cultural Center. And Fernando always says, we don't want to just be Hispanic serving, we want to be a Hispanic thriving institution. And there's power in that. And I love that when he says that, because this means that we don't just want to have this number so we can get grants. This percentage of students is defined by the government that gets us extra grants or access to Title III funds. That's not what we want to be. We want our students to come here and succeed and thrive. We want our retention rates to skyrocket, our completion rates to skyrocket. Community colleges have demonstrated to me that they best understand who they're here to serve. There's more alignment with students who work. There's more alignment with students who are parents and families and first generation students. And frankly, I found I've never worked at a community college, but I discovered this as a consultant. I take home ideas from community colleges I work with because they understand their students. Their faculty are there to teach their students. Their student affairs services are there. They're not on that campus dreaming about going and being at a 4-year. They're there to work with the students they're there to work with. They know their data, they know their students, and they're committed. That's what I've seen. That's a bit anecdotal, but it's what I believe just because I've experienced it.
Let me add to that. I think that study is also talking about historically Black colleges and universities always having to prove themselves, right? And validating themselves. So a lot of HBCUs that are 4-year tend to stay away from associate degrees. We are now catching up in the space of certificates, right? Of course, some HBCUs do it better. But what I think we can do better in is workforce development, where we see a lot of our 2-year institutions do that well. And we are starting to engage in that space. And we have always been in that space, but I think 2 years do it very, very well. And I think for us, we need to start to look at, and from a globalist perspective, associate degrees, more certificate programs. How do we continue to build that workforce development at a historically Black college and university? And I think that really begins to close the gap between the 2-year institutions and whether it's minority serving institutions or others. I really believe that's where we can close that gap, because I would argue, HBCUs have been in crisis mode for a while, right? And we always having to prove why we're relevant. And I think if we begin to look at the student holistically, seeing where this pandemic has caused women in particular to leave their jobs and really take care of their families, and possibly going back into the workforce, how do we play a better role in helping that family to to move forward. So I think that's where we can begin to close the gap if we really begin to focus on that for workforce development, associate degrees, certificate programs, especially in the area that Jared Benjamin is in, the STEM field, cybersecurity. That's really starting to pick up. I know a lot of our institutions are going into the esports space. And so how do we begin to code and design? Those things don't take a 4-year degree sometimes. So we want to make sure we are doing that well. I would argue, again, we at HBCU, we know our students, right? But how does that translate with the programs that we offer?
And one thing I want to interject, and I know Jared, Vanessa may have something to say. I want to interject, and I forgot to say it in the question, but it's great answers. I forgot to talk about it also focused on the sense of belonging, and they talked about how 2-year institutions were more effective at creating what they call now a sense of belonging as well. Apologize for not including that as well, but still great answers. And was just, if Jared or Dr. Bustamante has something to say, just want to interject that as well.
No problem. Josh, I was thinking about actually what I was going to say then when Dr. Milan touched on the actual workforce entry models. I first want to say in our 4-year spaces, I work at a 4-year institution, and my starting hire was at HBCU, but I want to acknowledge in our 1st and 2nd year experiences, we have begun to dig in co-curricular programming, but I want to ensure that we're knowing the difference between co-curricular programming and extracurricular programming, because oftentimes the lines blur. And what happens is there's no complement to the curriculum with extracurricular. The co-curricular is the complement to the curriculum that's preparing our students for workforce entry. In my consulting space, I love this 1st and 2nd year experience, but in my 9-to-5 space at FIU, I'm over apprenticeship programming. And what I want to share is, too often we're encouraging folks to come into STEM. Yes, I'm a cyber engineer. This is my thing. I love STEM. But I got to be honest with you. If we don't have some folks doing liberal arts majors, some of our schools are going to close. So I think there's some value in certificate programming and co-curricular programming, because that music major now can understand how to code by getting a coding certificate. That religion major can still major in what he or she wants to invest his 4 years into, but still receive a cybersecurity industry certificate. Because let's be honest, y'all, my undergraduate and my graduate degree isn't where I'm working now. I'm not in the field of study. It was almost like a discipline measure that I had to show that I could get this on my CV. And now I'm teaching and using it, but my student affairs work isn't centered around my degree or my research. So it's important that we look at a co-curricular model. If we don't have a formal framework at our school, be advantageous. I encourage some faculty and some staff to not let divisions be our barrier, but instead let it be our bridge, where student affairs and academic affairs meet in the middle and say, how can we build a co-curricular experience and not allow division barriers to tell us we can't work together because one of us work harder than the other? Yeah, we all say it. So instead, let's come together for the customer, which is our student, and say, how can we build a co-curricular experience that will get them into the workforce? And I'll leave it at this. My mom was super excited when I put a degree on the wall, but she was even more excited when I forwarded her my job offer. So I want to share with you, don't think that the goal is one, just walking them across the stage. Walk them across the stage into interview opportunities, and then you've achieved ultimate success in providing an unlimited trajectory for our student customer population.
That's great. That's great. Vanessa, do you have anything to say? Because
Yes.
I would love to piggyback off that, but I'm gonna let you go first before I pick, because they said some great stuff.
Awesome. Yes, I think everybody has shared like really great insight, and I have to agree too with Dr. Jason. I think I would like to know a little bit more and disaggregate that data a little bit further. But working at a community college, I can only go based off what I've encountered with students, and a lot of our students don't want to leave the college because it's small, it's in their community, so they know the surrounding areas, they know, a lot of the people around as well. And sometimes, when it comes for that opportunity for transfer, they don't want to go because they see these, 4-year institutions as huge institutions where they're going to get lost. And so, being at a smaller institution, you're also able more to get involved and kind of be highlighted, at the community college, because again, we do also have a lot of students that go, are non-traditional, whether they attend classes at night or on the weekend, and now, fully online. And so I think for a lot of our students, they find, that sense of belonging on campus because they already belong to that community. Oftentimes when they're going to the university or they're, applying to universities across the nation, sometimes they're like, that's a whole new place for me. I already don't feel a sense of belonging, right? Because I'm not from there. I'm going to have to start all over again. I'm going to have to make new friends. My house isn't going to be within a certain miles distance, right? I also will say too, another thing that's very beneficial, and I can say this because I've worked at a 4-year and now a community college, but just the access to funding is very different. Community colleges get a lot more funding, from the chancellor's office for different initiatives and programs. And where I had, some of my homies at Cal State Northridge, they created, whether it was the Latino Male Initiative or the Black Male Initiative. And these were people who had their full-time jobs and doing this because this is something they're passionate about, not getting paid anything extra, doing this, facilitating these meetings or these círculos, like at 5 p.m., 6 p.m. at night for students outside of their jobs. Whereas, community colleges have Puente programs, they have Umoja programs, they have these programs that are fully funded, that have counselors attached to them, that have coordinators attached to them, that have mentors attached to them. You know what I'm saying? Like they have access to these other things, right? That sometimes the 4 years or universities aren't making as a priority, right? And why don't we have Puente programs or Umoja programs at universities, right? Why aren't those still continuing? Because that could also help in creating that bridge. If I was in Puente at my community college, at least I know that I can run to Puente when I go to, the university. At least I know that that's a group that I was already part of. And there's my sense of belonging. Like there's no connection, there's no bridge between what we're doing at the community college and the university, sometimes even the surrounding universities, right? So we're a feeder school to CSU San Marcos, right? And so there's very little programmatic exchanges that are happening between us and CSUSM, right? And so it's really starting to like dive into that and make those partnerships and collaborations, and also work to kind of like what Jared was saying, create that bridge. We're not just walking you across the stage, we're walking you into that transition to your transfer campus as well. And then we're also helping you to get that job, which is, why a lot of our students go to school, right? They want that career, they want to make, a certain salary or whatever it is, that career initiative, right? So it's really looking at that. And I think I could honestly, I guess from my interactions with students, I would say that that's where the sense of belonging is from. It's already part of their community. They're already comfortable with being, knowing that the Vallarta supermarket is across the street. Instead of I was going, I'm going to go to school in New York, where's the Vallarta supermarket here? Right? That's already not like letting me feel like I belong, right? So I think it's looking at not just the campus itself, but like the surrounding community. And I think that also provides that sense of belonging for students.
Hey, Dr. Josh,
Man,
can I follow up with one thing? Can I follow up with one thing? And I'll be quick. So one of the other important data things around this that I'll share from my campus are in California. So Humboldt State, our graduation rate is about 54%. Community college transfers graduate from Humboldt State at 72%. But our top feeder, which is College of the Redwoods, the local community college, which is about 8 miles from campus, totally graduates at 82%. The highest graduation rate of all community colleges and high schools. And we get a huge swath of those students every year who transfers to CR. And I say that as a supplement to Dr. Bustamante's very astute point around the fact that they had great community there at the community college, and then they transfer here. and they maintain their community. And we have tons of relationships with them. We invite students to our basketball games. When we have speakers on campus, we always hold tickets for CR students. And all of that helps create that community and that continuity that she described. But that graduation rate is it. And also, I have to shout out Dr. Terrell Strayhorn, who is like the harbinger of all things sense of belonging, the best book out there. Second edition is out. I cited in almost everything I wrote. But he has a real great deep dive in the sense of belonging. I encourage everyone to read Dr. Strayhorn's work as well.
I think those are really, really great points. And just to recap, just well, number one, funding. I think that was a really good point. But something that just stood out to me was creating community. You see that again in retention all the time as far as community and support. One thing I think, just as I'm listening today, that should be added to new student orientation first year programs is how to create community, right? I've never seen someone do a lot of those programs where how do you create your community? How do you build these relationships? How do you create that right when you come onto a college campus, especially when you're more so used to being digital, being virtual. Now I'm in person. How do I build that community? How do I connect with community? How do I build relationships with that? And that really connects me really to what Jared and Dr. Emmanuel are saying when it comes to workforce development. I was actually did a study of about 900 culturally diverse and first generation students that are related to retention, engagement, and career development. And one of the things that I discovered was I asked a question, how do you look for a job? And one of the things that they talked about is it was overwhelming that people said we go through job boards or LinkedIn. But what was really low was someone that you know. And if you ever do research on career success, you will find that most of your greatest professional opportunities don't come from a job board, that actually come from a connection in who you know. And if students are not learning how to build connections, how to build community, how to connect with people, not only is it impacting their collegiate experience, but ultimately it's going to affect them career-wise as well. And so I want to definitely share that. And the other thing I wanted to share, I think as it relates to sense of belonging, again, workforce ready as well, is I think representation matters. And again, a lot of times we talk about as far as faculty, but I even think it matters who you bring to your campus. Again, I'm a speaker and we do a conference. So that's the standpoint that I'm aware of. But I think it matters of who you bring to your campus, what professionals you bring back. A lot of times, a lot of my Black speaker friends talk about this on how they'll go to certain student activity conferences. And if you're a Black speaker, oh, they're a Black History Month speaker. And they'll put them in this box. And there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, you want to talk about your culture. But again, Black speakers can talk about orientation. They can talk about leadership. They can talk about wellness. They can talk about mindfulness. They can talk about mental health. They can talk about healthy relationships. I mean, I can go on and tell you how many Black speakers can speak in those areas, but yet it seems sometimes that Black speakers get pigeonholed. And so one of the things I discovered with Circle of Change when it comes to workforce, because we focus on career leadership development, is literally we have about 7 keynote speakers, 4 to 7 keynote speakers, about 60 professionals from major organizations. And I would go on to say, and Dr. Bustamante could agree with me, we probably have about 90 to 95% of multi-ethnic professionals, literally 90 to 95%. And I didn't mean to share this thing, but I'll share. I'll never forget when we first started, someone actually said to me, I think you have too much color in your conference. I never forget, this is a true statement. And it came from a person of color. There's too much color at your conference, and I was just like, what? But we've been intentional about that because representation matters. Because when a student, a first gen or a culturally diverse student goes to a conference and they see someone that looks like them, that shares their story, I mean, the impact is incredible. And this is not just me sharing, it comes through our evaluations. Man, it was great to see a CEO that looks like me. It was great to see a woman of color that can relate to me, but that's in a powerful position. It's great to see people from different cultural backgrounds that I can actually connect with, that I can relate to, that I can build network with. It's so incredibly important. And I just think, and I don't know, maybe it's not popular, I just think we need to do a better job, not just with faculty, but with who we're bringing to our campus. Are we bringing people from different backgrounds to everything and not just pigeonholed? And so I just think that's really important. But we're getting ready to move on to our rapid fire questions. So this is what Rapid Fire is about. For those of you that that filled out the registration form, you know we asked you what were your questions. So we have 8 questions. Each of our panelists is going to have 1 minute to answer the question. Literally, they're going to have 1 minute. So I'm going to start with you, Vanessa, and this is going to be the question for you. Vanessa, you have 1 minute. How did you transition to create an effective virtual onboarding orientation experience for your students? Your minute starts now.
I'm just gonna say we just had to dive in and do it. I think COVID didn't give us a choice. It was really at that point just trying to find free technologies that we could utilize to put into Zoom, because everybody was using Zoom and we didn't want to just do Q&As or do chat feature. We wanted to have something interactive so students could talk to each other, could connect with each other. We did, breakout rooms for students going around kind of like in a circle, introducing themselves, talking about themselves, asking a question, or giving a statement of what they were scared of coming into the campus environment virtually. So it's really, I think it was just really just get moving and then working as a team to identify free things like the Poll Everywhere, the Canva, that made graphics interactive and moving, utilizing message boards and post-it notes, these virtual, all these virtual platforms that were free to get students to talk to each other and to engage. And I think it also provided an opportunity for students who maybe aren't good in crowds or weren't good at, being in those big orientation programs with 100 to 200 students at a time. It allowed for some of our introverted students, to also engage with folks, not have to have their camera on, but also, engage through chat or engage through other ways.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Bustamante. We're moving on. Dr. Emmanuel, you have 1 minute. This is rapid fire question. This is your question. How do you support students during the unrest that has been transpiring in our nation? Time starts now.
Sure. So for us, one, we want to meet them where they are, right? We want to provide training on how to properly protest, right? Make sure that we have conversations around racial equality and have those programs in place for them. I think what is also important is making sure that they know and can feel that we as administrators have been there, right? I have been stopped by a cop. I have been racially profiled. So them feeling that we can relate to their pain and struggles, and we have emotions are surrounded around that as well. So again, making sure that we can be relatable, right? Making sure that they just have the training and knowledge on what protests mean, and giving them the education on not just, okay, being involved on the national level when it comes to elections, but what does that mean on a local level, and addressing those issues that way.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Emmanuel. We're moving on to our next person. Dr. Merriweather, you have 1 minute. Here we go. How do people connect and support students from rural areas? You're on.
Absolutely. Love that question. And it really starts with understanding the competition in a rural area. That's really important. See, for us, the competition isn't always another community college or another four-year institution. Sometimes the competition is the job, the employment, the family dynamics, the need to support younger siblings or to support grandparents or even entrepreneurship. Sometimes it's, our family owns this business, stay in the business. You don't need a degree. So it's really the value proposition for education. It is really our competition. So in a sense, we're competing with ourselves, but also we're competing with the dynamic that, you have a business leader who says, well, why go out and go to this school and get $30,000 worth of debt when you could come and work for me and make $35,000 a year? Now, there's one, that doesn't always work for their children, but it's someone else's children. But two, it's also a scale of, well, what will you be making in 10 years? Can you move up? What can you do? But then those same people will say, well, we want someone who can think critically to be a supervisor, and we can't find them. Yes, you can. They're right here. It's your four-year institution. where we graduate students who started here or graduate transfers.
I love it. I love it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Merriweather. Last one, Jared, you have 1 minute. What do professionals need to address as students come back to campus after the pandemic? Time starts now.
If you made it through the pandemic, it's not much you won't be able to make it through. We haven't had this experience since 1918. And so that tells you it doesn't come often. So if you made it through this, now you have gained skills that will make you successful as a student leader. It'll make you successful as a professional leader. It'll also make you successful as you matriculate through college and through the work into the workforce. And lastly, tell them that every step matters. Don't take shortcuts, don't skip steps. Josh, you've heard this story from me before. As a kid, I grew up with a single mom with 3 boys. My mama said, I ain't taking them groceries upstairs. So in them 3, taking them groceries upstairs, I used to skip steps. And every time I'd skip a step, I'd fall. And that's when I knew there was a value in each step. So let's ensure there's a value in each step. Yes, I lost circulation in my hand carrying all them grocery bags, but I didn't want to make continuous trips. So it's okay if you don't make a trip to the same place you struggled from. But what's important is you take each step from your struggle all the way to your success, because every step matters. And that step is a part of your journey.
I love it. I love it. Man, can we give our panelists a big round of applause for that rapid fire session? Real quick, I got about 2 to 3 minutes. So we're going to share some quick information, and then we're going to get right back into our conversation. It's what I call, it's our commercial, right? It's about resources. So for those of you that are here today, we have a variety of resources that I want to make you aware of. The first thing I want to make you aware of is at the Circle of Change Leadership Experience, we have literally 5 e-courses available. The first one is a student success e-course, literally how to prepare your first and second year students for academic success. And literally, if you click on the link that's going to show up in the chat box, you can go there and you can go to our form and literally just check it off, and we'll send that information to you. Another one, we just came off of our first generation career conference. Man, it was powerful. And so literally we've created into an e-course. Literally, if you serve first generation students and you're looking for career development resources, I would highly encourage you to consider that. And then coming in the future, we have one on inclusive leadership. So if you want to do an e-course on inclusive leadership, that will be available, as well as resilience. So you'll see it says building the resiliency to win in everything. That e-course is coming soon. And then our last one is our Circle of Change virtual conference from last year. We literally have a whole career development virtual e-course that's going to be available by July 1st. And so if you want to have any of these resources, if you feel this may be great for your students or for your campus community, just click on the link. And all you have to do is go to that link, and then you just check off what you want, and you will get more information about that. And this is one of the things I wanted to make available to you. If you say, this is something I think may be a resource, but to be honest with you, Dr. J, I want to actually see what this is like. This is what you need to do. Just check it off and then send me an email, and I'll give you a complimentary registration to one of the program. Again, inclusive, the Circle of Change, and the resilience won't be available until later in June and July. But if you put that information, you will get a complimentary copy. And then obviously I have my new book called Red Leadership. I talked about it earlier, Retain, Engage, Develop Culturally Diverse Leaders. If you want more information about that, that's available as well. And then the last thing before we get back into our conversation, again, you've heard some incredible speakers. Each of them has the ability to speak to your professional staff or some of your upcoming events. And according to when you filled out the questionnaire, I believe like literally about 75 to 80% of people said that they bring in speakers for different programs. So again, if you want to bring a speaker here that you think may be great for your campus community, just check that information off as well. And what I will do is make sure that I get that information to them. In addition, connect with them on LinkedIn. You don't have to go through my form, just connect them on LinkedIn. But whatever the case may be, we're here to serve. We're here to provide resources so that ultimately we can help you become even that much more. We can work with you to make a greater impact in the lives of our culturally diverse and first generation students that are getting ready to begin their academic journey just this upcoming year. Now, one more thing, we're getting back into our discussion. Y'all know I believe in games. I believe in virtual games. So what you did not know is we have a Wheel of Fortune that's about to come on the screen right now. The first 20 people that responded, I actually had Michael, our video producer, put your name on a wheel. So we're going to spin the wheel right now. You see it's coming up right there. We're going to spin the wheel right now. And whoever's name that it lands upon, you're going to get a $20 Cash App. Now, again, if you're not here, we don't award, but if the person is here, you're going to get it. So, Michael, real quick, spin the wheel. Let's give out a prize real quick. Here the wheel goes. It is spinning, and the winner is, here we go. Carwan Paul. If Carwan Paul is still here, please give us your Cash App information. We're going to send you a $20 gift card, not gift card, but a $20 Cash App that you can use on whatever you desire. If you have Venmo, let us know as well. But just let us know. Can we give a big congratulations to Carwin? And we want to just congratulate you so much. I'm not sure if Dr. Bustamante has to go or not. I remember you said you had to stay earlier. If you're able to stay, we'd love to have you, but just let us know. And we're going to move into this next question. I don't want to waste no time because content is important. Next question is this. I'm going to target this at Dr. Emmanuel. We're dealing with COVID. There's been so many changes when it comes to COVID-19. Over the next 1 to 3 years, what specific adjustments do you believe that first-year experience programs, new student orientation, welcome week, and succession initiatives are going to have to implement or consider in order to be effective due to what has transpired because of COVID-19? Dr. Emmanuel, it's on you.
Sure, great question. I think all of the above that we talked about during this conversation, I think we need to continue to consider diversity, equity, and inclusion, making sure that we train both our faculty and staff and our students as it relates to issues around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I also think fall 2021 will be a year that we're bouncing back. So fall 2022 will be more of a baseline year. So learning from that semester, how to move forward in our planning. I think the impact on COVID is still being learned. So find some ways to find grace, being intentional. I think every program that you are doing has to have a purpose behind it. And how do we become more intentional, as I said in the beginning? Supporting our students, how do we provide wraparound services? I think students are going to need that more and more. For us at Benedict College, we have students who are parents, right? So how do we support them holistically? How do we make sure that we provide the services? How do we really think about the COVID HERF 1, 2, 3? Our president here at Benedict College, Dr. Rosin Clark Artis, she didn't really just give students money, but she wanted to make sure she addressed the insecurities of our students, the mental health of our students. Those things are going to be important. So over the next couple of years, mental health is, if it wasn't important before, it is greatly important now. So how do we make sure we protect and cater to mental health in the Black community? We kind of shy away from that mental health because we just never been accustomed to it and accustomed to addressing it. So it's going to be important that we take care of that. And the next 3 years, I think that is going to be extremely important as students are coming from their virtual high school space.
Amazing. I love it. Jared, Dr. Merriweather.
I yield to you, Dr. Merriweather. Go ahead, brother.
I don't even know where to begin. Man, Dr. Manny covered it all.
Yeah.
I do want to just stay on one thing he said that's important is the effort to destigmatize mental health support, particularly in communities of color, especially in the Black community. I really am concerned about and then the other part is how do you meet students' needs in that space. So it used to be you had a counseling center and you hired who you hired in the counseling center and students would see them. I think there's always been an understanding, not always action, but an understanding that there's a need for diversity in counseling and support. But it wasn't until David Satcher did a supplement to the Surgeon General's report on mental health that really focused on the Black community and other communities of color that really, I think, got a national eye on it to make higher ed shifts and practices to a degree. But if you look at what's happening now in this space, students show up and now students understand I need some support. But students are not even just like, I need some support. They're like, I want a counselor who's 6'2", gender non-conforming, hopefully with purple dyed hair, from Brooklyn, right? That drives a car that I'm comfortable with. Now, I say that with a degree of levity, but students really understand that they need support in the mental health arena, right? And they reach for it. I've allowed my mental health team, my counseling center, we've hired new counselors, we've given extra staff, new grad assistants, we've done all this stuff, and we still can't keep up. And then between vicarious trauma, and all the fatigues that have been exacerbated through the pandemic, our demands have gone up. We're hiring a company to help us offer 24-hour support, but also to help us with diversity. We're doing all this stuff and students need it. But here's the challenge. Now the same people who support students now go back and say, wow, you want help? Oh, you're necessarily weak. Or there's something somehow problematic about you as a student. You lack resilience. You know, we use these codes and these terms. You're not resilient like we used to be. There's no crying in baseball. And we do that, and we create this retrograde dynamic for the students that we're supposed to support. And that's we in this field. And I'm going to square for student affairs on this one, that we do this to our students. When frankly, it's not that we as a former generation we're tougher than our students. It's I frankly believe our students are a little bit more honest about seeking help than we were. And we can't make that problematic. So I just want to pick on that we have to destigmatize the need for mental health support among our students and truly resource it. And going back to orientation, that can't be like the thing that's in the building down the hall, right? When we're on ground, or that can't be the separate Zoom. Someone who's that? Bergen Amir. It's a sign of strength. I saw that in the chat. It's a sign of strength to seek help. That's right. And so we have to engage that, and we have to destigmatize it, because we've been preaching to our students, destigmatize the need for mental health and support, but then we don't treat them as well as we should when they need help.
That's real. That's real.
So I just called this out I called out our student affairs folks on this. We have to own this, and we have to navigate the system to keep these sources as support. I love what Dr. Milan and I, we chat a lot. And we were talking about like some of the stuff we did with our CARES dollars and the way we're using some of those things creatively. And we talk about this a lot because it's real. It's so real. And so I say this slowly and a little more deliberately with a little less flair than I sometimes deliver things when I speak, because I want to say that mental health component is where it's at out of everything else, because we lose our students. If we don't use these 4 critical years that we have, or maybe 6, if we don't use that critical time to give our students a base for support, no matter what their GPA is, we set them up for failure.
Man, Jason, thanks a lot, brother. I just want to leave with this here, Josh, as it pertains to this question. Placement matters. And while I say placement matters, where I got my 4-year degree, the counseling center was in the student union activity center. And so, you know, if I need to go report I have a mental health issue or I've been sexually assaulted, I don't feel comfortable going where everybody going to get fried chicken and wings to go tell somebody I need mental health and be seen walking in if it's already a stigma associated with seeking help. So safe spaces matter. And placement of where these services are located matter. So I'm encouraging campus-based professionals and cabinet leaders that need to be briefed this. Be sure we're placing these resources in an accessible way that protects the students as well that are seeking the help. You know, because you already know where the food is where we hang out at. Come on now. So you don't need to be placing it there where you know, so it's important that you're placing these resources in safe spaces, because I can guarantee you, You know, back when I was an undergrad, there's some folks that didn't seek help because they didn't want to be seen seeking help. And so what it had them doing is going to other folks for help, but they were not trained professionals, so they couldn't really guide them. They could only console them. And so sometimes consoling is not enough. It saves the life, but it doesn't fix the problem. So we need to be sure the professionals are placed in spaces that are safe and that are at least protecting the person that may be the victim in that season. That's all I have, Josh. And thank you for letting me be a part of this dynamic panel, my brother.
No, I think that's really, really good. I think that's really powerful. A lot of great stuff. And one of the things I wanted to add on to it that I think is really important as well is virtual learning. For me personally, I was fortunate. I got my undergrad and my master's degree as an in-person student. But when I got my doctoral degree, I was a virtual student. I had a job, I had a family, I had a variety of different things going on. And one of the things that I discovered that being a traditional student or an in-person student versus a virtual student is completely different. There's different skill sets, there's different strategies, even different ways of doing things. And what we did during this last year is we just threw students into a virtual learning experience without no training. I mean, literally, how many programs did you see out there that were really effective at helping students know how to be an effectual virtual student? When we deal with Wi-Fi, when we deal with technology, when we deal with access and a variety of other things. And so I think one of the big things that I think every college in America should consider is really integrating how to prepare students to be a virtual student, not just the simplistic stuff, but as far as the specific things like how are you resourceful? How do you have proper Wi-Fi? How do you use different platforms? How do you network? How do you get things done when your professor doesn't get back in contact with you for 48 to 72 hours? What do you do when maybe, you have to take a Zoom call from your phone? I mean, there's just a variety of things that come up that I think a lot of students weren't prepared for. And ultimately, if they're not prepared, it's going to affect them. And I think as we go back, I do think there's going to be in person, but I still think there's still going to be virtual learning. There's still going to be a hybrid approach. So I think one of the things we have the great opportunity to do now is not only teach our students, but even our professional staff. How do you teach? How do you lead virtually? And this is the caveat on it. It's not only going to help them from a learning standpoint, but to go a step farther, it's going to also help them in their career, because there's a lot of companies that I've discovered it's actually more economical to have virtual workforce versus an actual in-person workforce. And again, according to one of the studies that I did, again, this is about 900 culturally diverse and first-generation students. One of the things that was shocking to me is literally about 75 to 80% said they prefer a hybrid approach versus in-person or virtual. So this is a reality of the future. But again, we have to be trained in this area. I don't know about y'all, but I never had a training how to be a virtual student. I was just thrown into the fire and expected to win. But when we look at this on a global scale, I think that is a niche that is so incredibly important. It's so different. It's so different. And I know me and Jared, we've been doing virtual presentations for about a year and a half, and we've done hundreds. And I can tell you, when I'm in this office doing a virtual presentation with all the different dynamics, I'm sure Jared can talk about it, it's completely different. And so I think that is something that's extremely important. And I want to move on to this last question. And Dr. Merriweather, Dr. Emmanuel, Jared, I had a book launch last Monday on Red Leadership. And I had to ask the question about engagement. And be honest with you, sometimes we have conversation. I'm sure each of you know as speakers, you get ideas as you're talking. And as I was having a conversation, one of the things that I realized is that it's impossible to be effective at engaging multi-ethnic or first-generation students without cultural competence. It's impossible. If you don't know your students, if you don't understand the cultural background, your engagement is already done. And so one of the things I share with them is this. I said, if you're going to engage professionals, if you're going to engage a staff or just engage students, if you lack cultural competence or intelligence, you're already missed the boat and you're already in trouble from the jump. And so, which brought me to my point into why I think it's even extremely advantageous and important to incorporate, I like to say, cultural competence and cultural intelligence into the conversation when we deal with orientation, when we deal with first year experience and everything else. And so as we've been talking about this consistently, what I want to ask all of you and whoever wants to go first, what is one aspect of DEI training that you believe students and student affairs professionals must receive in order to increase their retention and engagement. Dr. Mann, I know you talked about it significantly beforehand, but what is one part of, because when we deal with it, there's so much to talk about, but what is one specific thing like this has to be done? Whoever wants to take it away, it's on you.
Ensure they belong. You want to feel like you belong. Otherwise, I just feel like I'm there paying institutional bills and going to a classroom. So it's okay if you want to query your first gen or your first year population. Ask them where they're from, say a few things about them, build some data points to share back with your faculty and staff. So now when they're teaching through an applicable lens. You know, I teach quantitative methods and applied calculus and microeconomics. You're not going to use those things every day, but when I relate them to my cultural experience in a socioeconomic lack of privilege in Natchez, Louisiana, now folks' ears open up and say, hold on, Professor Benjamin has been there before. So I guess I'll listen. And they're applying the formula, not to an applicable sense, but at least they're willing to hear it out of my mouth, because I'm not just viewed as somebody with socioeconomic privilege. I'm viewed as somebody who's made it through, and they're seeing what it looks like on the other side of struggle. Success still exists there. So ensure they don't just come and we build equitable presence or we build diverse presence, but we make everybody who show up, faculty, staff, and student, feel like they belong in our family. They belong in our family.
Let me add this point, because I agree with Jared on that sense of belonging. What we haven't talked about, but I'm sure we do, but it's going to be even more important, is as we plan these events, as we plan these activities, include those individuals that we're serving. So the students, right? Include them in the planning, include them in everything that we're doing to ensure that we are trying to get it right, right? I think that is important when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We as professionals tend to just be laser focused on making sure that August or whenever you start your NSOs, that you have everything together, you have the logistics down packed, but we sometimes forget to make sure that we are including the students that we are looking to serve. So making sure that in your planning that you are including the students there, because you know we don't get it right all the time, right? And making sure that they're part of the planning ensures that we are on the right track.
I love it. Jason.
Okay, so I'm just telling you now, I'm going to fail at only giving you one. If you were on an airplane, if we fly, how many of us have been on an airplane at some point before the pandemic, or maybe even boldly done so during the pandemic or since it's began to ease? When you're on an airplane, how many of us fly a lot? Like I fly a lot. So I never pay attention to the announcements because I fly and I know the announcements. But when we slow down and pay attention to the announcements, there's this specific thing they say, you know, in case, you know, of a decline in air pressure, above your head, oxygen mask will drop from the ceiling. And when the oxygen masks drop, they give you a particular instruction. And that instruction is cover your own face, and then help the person next to you. Cover your own face and then help the person next to you. Why do they do that? Because if you don't have your own oxygen together, you can't save your neighbor. You can't help the child that's with you. You can't help the older person that's with you or the person who's struggling or afraid until you get yourself together. And so the first part of this for us is we have to stop punishing ourselves for taking care of ourselves. It can't be a competition. Oh, you take a day off work, you're somehow less of an employee. That becomes so harsh, especially for us in the student affairs and enrollment management side of the house. And so I share that to say that we have to give ourselves a little bit of time for healing, to become self-actualized, and to deal with our own stuff. Because many times in student affairs, we have to help students who are triggered, harmed, bothered, damaged, injured by the system, right? And so we can't put ourselves in a position where we can do the healing until we give ourselves just a bit of grace and time to heal ourselves, particularly when it comes to microaggressions, macroaggressions, misgendering, bias, hostility, whatever you call it. We can give it all those beautiful scholarly terms, but hurt hurts. And if we ourselves are still wrestling with our hurt without being able to take care of it, it is quite difficult for us to serve our students effectively. So begin there. So that's my answer. And reward yourself with what you deserve, and that is to take care of yourself, for us to take care of ourselves. And I'm a workaholic. I'm not the best at it. But folks, let's take care of ourselves. And for y'all supervisors in the space, quit tripping with these people about taking a day off. They're professionals. We're professionals. We got sense enough to know, okay, it might be a little too busy to take a day off during orientation or move in, but it's June, it's July, it's still May. Quit tripping with these folks about taking time off. Now, that aside, let me give you a more scholarly answer. Data can drive us in this DEI conversation as well. Told you I'd fail at one answer. Data can drive us. We actually can give people space to measure the impact of our services. We can actually understand some correlations that don't necessarily equate causation, but they can have an impact. We took that stats class in grad school, so let's use it to actually assess the effectiveness of our programs and the work we do on the students that we serve and that we care about so much. Especially when the budget cut time comes, we're going to need that. So use data to drive us in our DEI work and our work for orientation, even in the things that impact sense of belonging. And it's okay to even talk about how it impacts revenue. We can't be so altruistic that we can't do that. But back to that first point, let me just unpack that one more time. Let us please, particularly managers and supervisors, deans, directors, vice presidents, and Dr. such and suches, let us please stop harming our folks for wanting a little time to breathe, to boo up, to bay up, to be with their families, or to just sleep.
Let me co-sign.
Yeah, co-sign. Go on, co-sign, Dr. Manuel. Go on, co-sign.
Come on with it,
yes.
Doc.
Happy people are productive people, right? If they are happy at work, they are going to be more productive. I am a big component, champion of making sure that my team has a work-life balance, although I am a stickler. I am a tough person to work for. I do believe in happy people are productive people. So right on, Jason.
Yeah, that was great. And I was going to follow up on that, Jason. There's a quote by Susan Taylor that I heard several years ago. I continue to use it. She said, hurt people hurt people. And normally, if we don't deal with our hurt, if we don't deal with our pain or just our challenges, we're more quick to go off on someone. I can talk myself. You ever know when you're just going through a lot of stress right now and someone says one thing and you don't normally cuss a person out, but you don't cuss that person out because you were just on edge. And I think what you said is so great, Jason and Dr. Emmanuel. I think it's and Jared as well. I think, times we're living in right now and what we've just come through, right? Just making sure you're all right. I'm telling you right now, like I can't wait till tomorrow because I'm on my way on a flight to celebrate my friend's 40th birthday. And I'm off the grid or whatever the case may be for about 5 days. And man, the brother needs it. It's been a long year. I'm even looking at my July. My July is a little light as a speaker. And I ain't even tripping. I'm like, thank you, because I need to just chill. Some of you just need to just chill. And like Jason said, sometimes you need to just sleep. Hello, just sleep and just recuperate because, again, before you know it, y'all, it's going to really get real. So many things to be done and so much work to be done. I want to thank those who have stayed with us this long. We went over a couple of minutes, but again, I think it's been well worth it because our panelists share some incredible information. It's always a blessing to be amongst such incredible professionals, leaders, and just people. If you cannot tell, Dr. Jason, Dr. Emmanuel, Jared, and Dr. Bustamante are just amazing people. And so I'm going to start with you, my guy, Jared. Just want to represent the blue and white family, Phi Beta Sigma. But real quick, Jared, real quick, if you don't mind,
Boy.
what is your final what is your final word of wisdom that you'd like to leave for tonight? And
I'm
we'll
about to
move
say,
all the
man,
way through and we'll get ready to
you gonna have
close
to
out.
mute
And
Jason
also I
and
want to tell
Emmanuel
people
shouting out
real
to Fred.
I know. And also, I want to tell people really quickly, the recording will be available. So the recording will be available. You'll get an email from me first thing next Tuesday. I told y'all today I'm shutting it all down. But by next, well, I'm sending out an e-letter, but that's another thing. But by next Tuesday, you'll get an e-blast. I promise you of this recording and everything else. But Jared, what's the final word of wisdom?
I would tell you, man, as you go through this journey, no one's perfect. So you're gonna make mistakes, but just learn from them. Don't try to avoid mistakes so hard that you find yourself overworking yourself. You're human, your students are human. Treat everybody like they're capable of not being perfect. And I believe we have made it through the worst, y'all. So let's champion this academic year with developing our next set of leaders and scholars. Sherry Chisholm, who would have thought in the 70s, after she got the majority nomination from majority party, even though she didn't win, she still won. Why do I say that? When I watch Vice President Kamala Harris get elected and she was being sworn in, my 11-year-old daughter looked at me and said, Dad, now I believe I can be a leader in the next generation. Well, guess what? If Chisholm didn't make a pathway in the 70s, Kamala wouldn't be here in 2021. So I say that to say, well, we survived in 2020 and 2021. In 2041, we're gonna be research. We're gonna be best practices. So walk in a path knowing that you're building a pathway for best practices and you're building a pathway for tangible research to make the next generation of leaders. Thank you so much, Josh, for this opportunity.
I love it, Jared. You always bring the fire. Give him a round of applause. My man always bring the fire. Represent. Dr. Emmanuel.
Kappa has to go when it comes to this whole work. But let me say this. Who would have thought someone who started in foster care? Who would have thought someone who had 2 traumatic experiences in life? Who would have thought someone who just didn't have the opportunity statistically to go to college right away? Who would have thought, right? Who would have thought sitting here today, they would be going to college, masters, and their doctorate, right? Your work matters. You never know who you're going to come across. You never know what the work that you're doing, how it will impact that student. So your work matters. Your work matters. And sometimes it can be hard. Sometimes you feel like you're not getting through a student. But trust me, if you can save one student, you can save them all. Right? Your work matters. So continue to push through. Continue to give yourself grace. Continue to be intentional. And when it warrants, give yourself a pause and some time to reflect, refresh, and get ready for a new day. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Emmanuel. Fantastic. Just came here dropping the mic. Man, powerful, powerful. Dr. Merriweather, it's on you.
Thank you so much. It's been awesome to be on this panel. My colleagues, Dr. Milan, Professor Benjamin, and certainly to Dr. Bustamante. And of course, you, Dr. Josh, we go back. And so being in this space is really an honor because we get to talk about what we love, but also the work that we do on our campuses. It's easy to get in these spaces and to get energized and to get pumped up and to feel really good and then go back to work and get pulled back into the stuff that probably made us sign up for the conversation in the first place. For me, my closing thought is take what you've learned, take what you brought, feel empowered to use it. Take what you've learned, but also remember, take what you brought. The people in this space came with knowledge. You arrived with skill. This is an enhancement conversation. This is to enhance the skill and the talent that you have in order to effectively mitigate and navigate those challenges that exist on your campuses. so that you can effectively expedite those strategy levers that will further your goal of student success and completion. That said, I encourage you, go back to your campuses, take what you've learned, take what you brought, and go to work. And reach out to us if we can be a support. We're all on LinkedIn. We all have emails. Reach out. Always glad to wrap. But just remember, you're here because you belong here. Take what you learned, take what you've brought, and go do the dang thing on your campus. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
That was awesome. Man, can we give Dr. Merriweather a big round of applause? Thank you so much. Dropping the mic. Man, I don't know about y'all, but it's been an incredible day. I just want to thank Dr. Merriweather. I want to thank Dr. Emmanuel, thank Jared, thank Dr. Bustamante. Y'all have all been incredible. It's always great to do these virtual master classes. Again, we've been doing it now for about a year and a few months. And it just doesn't stop, y'all. We're going to continue to do these. Some people got annoyed with my email, but it's okay. One of the things I learned really, really quickly is I know a lot of students need their professionals to be in these kind of sessions. And so if I got to keep reminding people, I'm going to keep on reminding them, because I know that once you get into conversations like this, not only is it going to empower you, but more importantly, it's going to empower your students. And that's what this is all about. It's about providing resource and empowerment so that we can make the world a better place. And so again, I want to thank you all so much for being a part of this. We're going to continue doing this. We'll have one next month, and that one's going to be focused on those who want to be future speakers. I got a group of people that have been speaking for years that are going to just talk about how do you become a speaker? How do you become a professional speaker? And then we have some more coming up in July and August. But again, I want to thank you all so much. It's always an honor and it's a pleasure to be here each and every month with you. Again, connect with the panelists. If you want to learn more about Circle of Change, you can visit the website. Again, you'll get a follow-up email from me next Tuesday with the link to this video as well as additional information as well. So I want to just thank you all so much. Have an incredible rest of the week. Have an enjoyable Memorial Day weekend. And as Dr. Merriweather said, get some rest. And if you just got to sleep, get some sleep. Take care of yourself. And I know Jason has that barbecue grill up there in California. So if y'all got some barbecue, get that barbecue grill going and man, just turn up. I don't know, Dr. Man, you may have some barbecue as well, but I know Jason be on Instagram with the barbecue food and everything. But man, enjoy the barbecue. I'm eating some barbecue myself. I've enjoyed some myself. But again, thank you all so much. We're getting ready to close out. We'll see you on the next one next month. Peace.